So I just want to let you know. So for those of you who haven't had the opportunity to meet, my name is Anne Reed, and I am the Director of Community Collaboration at the Jewish Federation of Ottawa, and it's my absolute pleasure to welcome you here tonight. This is our final session of J Fellows 2022. So before diving in to tonight's session, we first begin by acknowledging that Ottawa, the land on which we gather, whether in our homes or at our places of work, is the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. We know that acknowledging the land will not remove or atone for atrocities that have taken place here, yet it is our intention to honor First Peoples of this land as we move with humility in the direction of reconciliation, healing, and justice. A stimulating part of my role here at Federation is spearheading J Fellows, which is our Young Leadership Development Program, where we actively get to grapple with what it means to be a Jewish leader in the 21st century. And tonight we have the honor of hearing from inspiring, forward-thinking Jewish leaders in our community, who I will be introducing momentarily. In J Fellows, we adopt the idea that leadership is an activity and not a role. Leadership is the activity of mobilizing people. The focus of our 2022 J Fellows series is on the application of core Jewish values in our professional lives. And one of Judaism's core values and a central commandment is welcoming and loving the stranger. So tonight we have the honor of hearing from the founders of Operation Abraham, an organization founded on this central Jewish value of showing active concern for the stranger. Concern for the just treatment of the stranger is a command that appears in the Torah more than 36 times, which is far more than any other command, including the commandment to love God or to keep Shabbat. And the historical collective experience of the Jewish people sensitizes us to the plight of quote unquote strangers or refugees, as it was Abraham who was told that his descendants would be strangers in a land not their own. As we will learn, Operation Abraham acts on this obligation not to ignore the cry of the oppressed elsewhere, but to welcome those who flee from the horrors of tyranny and persecution. This year, I have had the honor of working with our J Fellows chair, Amanda Shore, who I will now introduce. Born and raised in Ottawa, Amanda Shore is trained as an architect with a background in art history. She now works at the Royal Architectural Institute of Canada, a national architectural organization advocating for architecture and architects in Canada. Amanda spent several years living and working in New York and Toronto before returning to Ottawa in 2018. She is actively involved in the Alumni Executive Committee at Ashbury College and sits on a Camp Ramah in Canada committee. On the side, Amanda pursues her artistic endeavors with her small business, Amanda Shore Studio, which focuses on drawing and illustration, art prints, and greeting cards. Amanda is honored to be invited with Ottawa Jewish Federation's J Fellows program, with Federation's J Fellows program, and to help enrich the small but mighty Ottawa Jewish community. Amanda, without further ado.
Thank you very much, Anne, for the kind introduction. When brainstorming topics and themes for the J Fellows events, the idea of looking at Jewish values and their role and place in our daily lives was an easy one. Extracting broad themes like law, medicine, social justice provided a relatable framework to connect the ways in which many of us lead our lives today. One barely has to scratch the surface to see the value that Judaism can add to each of these themes, contributing to a full, happy, successful, and meaningful life and career. Over the past year, the J Fellows evenings have explored Jewish values surrounding the law by interviewing and learning about the extensive and impressive career of Justice Rosalie Abella, about medicine and reproductive rights with an informative and interesting discussion with Dr. Doron Shmorgan and Rabbi Deborah Zucker. And now with the roundtable discussion with our valued guests, Jacques Shore, Louis Retik, Dr. Farouq Samim, and Bram Bregman, discussing the issues of social justice and the importance of welcoming the stranger. Judaism places high importance on tikkun olam, making the world a better place. And by welcoming the stranger, the person we don't know, we aim to do just that. If we were all welcoming of those with different experiences than our own, I think we would all be better for it. My guests here today have dedicated their time, effort, and resources for over a year now to getting those at risk out of Afghanistan. What started with one family has grown to hundreds of families, with still more to come. This grassroots effort, driven by strong morals, sheer perseverance, and dedication to the task at hand, has illustrated how these values help to transcend boundaries and connect those with seemingly different backgrounds together. It is truly important work, and my pleasure to introduce you to them. Jacques Shore, who many of you already know is my father, is a partner at Gowling WLG here in Ottawa. He is the past national chair of the firm's government affairs practice and is a member of the advocacy group at the firm. He has extensive background in working in government and on national and regulatory issues. There are many things that I could say, but it would take too long, but he's active in the community and was recently appointed to the Order of Canada. Retik, also a partner at Gowling WLG, is also a partner at Gowling WLG. He leads the food and beverage group and co-leads the cannabis group. His practice is focused primarily on regulatory and commercial law with respect to commercializing regulated products, including regulatory licensing, product distribution, product classification, manufacturing, advertising, packaging, and labeling. I could easily speak about Dr. Farouq Samim for over an hour, recognizing all that he has done in his professional career. It is important to know that he helped and guided our Canadian and NATO troops in Afghanistan and worked closely with journalists in the field. His work was portrayed in the book Taliban Shuffle and the movie Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. Dr. Samim is currently the manager for the Ottawa Newcomer Health Centre, where he manages the provision of the most comprehensive healthcare package to newly arrived newcomers and refugees in the city. Bregman is president of the New Found Out Family Office in Ottawa and is an active volunteer in the Ottawa Jewish community. Bram currently serves as the chair of the Jewish Funders Network Canada and on the National Steering Committee of the Canadian Family Office Forum. Welcome to my guests, and I think we should just get to it. So I know that Jacques wants to give a little bit of background about the organization, so I'm going to turn it over to him.
Amanda, thank you so much. And it's wonderful to do this with you. It's our first time, I think, to work together in this way. So really appreciate it. And I'm really grateful to you as well for your words. And I'm really thankful to those that have organized this through J Fellows. This is a very important initiative and one that I know that I and my colleagues today that will be speaking with you really appreciate. So thanks so much. It's almost hard to determine where to begin because there's so much that's gone on. And I think, those of us that are on the call today just really have grown in many ways as well. But first, I want to begin by saying that we have certainly not completed our work at Operation Abraham. We continue to work every day to achieve the freedom for more than still 130 Afghans, which are on our Afghan refugee list, most of whom are in Pakistan and a few in 3 other countries. So it's almost with a heavy heart, I will admit to you, that we're speaking with you today because, at least for myself, I feel that there's still a lot more we have to do. We've gone through some very, very difficult months, but we've achieved some real success. This last stretch is not an easy one. So it's really is something that I also hope that by today we would have had everyone sitting with us here together, where side by side we would have had all of the Afghan families that we are really striving to bring to Canada. And I do hope that in the next few days we will be able to actually achieve that. So with regard to Operation Abraham, and thank you so much, because the context of Abraham is certainly important, and I think even becomes more important for us based on our values of the Torah and all, obviously in our Jewish faith. The name Operation Abraham actually came about in a moment when we were completely immersed and desperate one time in our efforts to help a family escape from Kabul, only hours after that city fell to the Taliban. That family was Dr. Farouq Samim's family. We had already worked several days to get that family out of Afghanistan's main Kabul airport on a commercial flight, but that attempt ended abruptly when a bomb went off and the airport closed. We were shattered. We didn't know what to do. somehow we were informed through US connections, and we were on about 18, 19, 20 hours a day in those early days. But we had learned that there was a connection through an international agency that would actually airlift Farouq's family out if we actually raised $1 million on that day. I mean, it was just incredible. A plane would actually, along with a few hundred other people, would actually be ready to fly out if we could get that money. Well, I can tell you there were 6 of us, and 5 of us, I think, on that call were of the Jewish faith. And we were sort of at a moment where we were all exhausted, we were tired, and we were running out of sort of, opportunities to really make good on our effort. And at one point, here we were, there were Americans and Canadians in that call, and Farouq, and we're all tense. And someone just says, well, oh my God, how are we going to do this? Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? And, and immediately at that moment, I just had to say, well, we knew it was a daunting task, but I said, it's because of Abraham, because these are our brothers and sisters. And Abraham is our patriarch. There's no question. So everyone, of course, said, obvious, clearly, we have to do this. We forged on. And Operation Abraham, I will confide again, that we really expected our work to be done in a few days. Operations are quick, right? They're not long missions. This has been lengthy. So 16 months later, we are deeply engaged. And thankfully, a lot of people are actually coming to us asking for help. But we did not imagine that we could say, that we're going to contribute to saving the lives of 1,500 people. But we have, and how amazing that is. Now, that first plane that took off, it wasn't just 400 people, 800 people. So 800 people got out, and for us, we were overjoyed. Sorry, I got a bit of laryngitis, and I'm moved because as I tell the story, it's very special. So the last point, obvious on Abraham, who was, obviously a remarkable figure as our patriarch, and, God knows there's a bond. There's a bond between us and our Muslim brothers and sisters. We have to work on that. So we did not know his families personally, but we knew we had to engage, and we did. And how grateful we are for the blessing to be able to help those that obviously couldn't be helped. We wanted to do so, and I describe this as a moral imperative, which we obviously understand as we recognize our roots together, and our faiths. That's the start.
Thank you, Jacques. That's incredible how everyone was able to mobilize and come together. And if I could turn it over to you, Louis, if you could give some of that background on how this, how did that even start?
So it was August, can't believe I'm going to say this, 2021. I got a call from a friend of mine, Dan Demers. And so how does a food lawyer get involved in rescuing refugees? Gets a call from the head of regulatory at the Canadian Health Food Association and says, I have a friend, I know you don't do this area of law, but I have a friend that really needs help. And, you're the closest person that I think might be able to figure it out. So I don't know what I can do, but let's speak to your friend. And so Farouq and Dan got on a Zoom call with me. And Farouq, by the way, is the most humble person when I met him for the first time. No idea what he did, like nothing about his background. And Dan explained to me that Farouq has a disabled sister who is in his family home that's in danger. And there's lots of disabled people in the world, and it was shocking to me that this one disabled person was in particular danger. So I started talking to Farouq about, well, why? why her? Like, what's going on here? I could see Farouq's losing it. So Farouq said, well, you know, a lot of it's based on his activities. And so over an hour, I was peppering, as a lawyer does, peppering Farouq with questions, and pulled from Farouq things like he wrote the NATO handbook in the Lagman province for NATO troops to help keep them safe. And his name was on that. The Taliban found out, and he was on the Taliban hit list. And he acted as a journalist. Farouq's a former medical doctor, but became a journalist to help expose the Taliban atrocities to the world, what they're doing to women and other minorities. He was a big part of that. He helped negotiate the release of kidnapped journalists. He helped rescue the lives of Americans. He came to Canada on a scholarship and trained Canadian troops before going over to Afghanistan to keep them safe. And here we have now a Canadian citizen whose disabled sister's only crime was being Farouq's sister and living in Farouq's home in Afghanistan. And, you know, it hit home. My grandmother, as many of the people on this call have relatives that are Holocaust survivors, so my grandmother's still alive. My grandmother escaped Poland to Russia, to Kazakhstan, to Uzbekistan. And what many people don't know is that my grandmother actually lived in a Sunni Muslim community in southern Uzbekistan, right near the Afghan border, where she was hidden, and she was passed off as Islamic. And here we are many years later, and I'm on the call with Farouq, and you know, what other choice did I have? Of course, I didn't know what the heck I was doing, because I am a food lawyer, let's be honest. And so I picked up the phone and called the only person I knew who may know someone who to call first. And I called Jacques, and I don't even think it was over 3 minutes, told him the story. Jacques stopped and said, well, it's obvious, we have to do something. And that was the beginning of Operation Abraham. And how, you know, we brought together so many special people, you know, including Bram and others, Brandon and Dan Demers, and, you know, people in the United States, well-known New York journalist, the author of the Taliban Shuffle, who all were key parts in turning this into what it was. But that's like, honestly, how no one sat down and said, let's start an organization to rescue refugees. Like, that did not happen. It was completely organic. And it all started, it was like a yarn, and the first string was rescuing Farouq's sister, and that grew into the 2 airplanes and to hundreds and hundreds of others.
Amazing. Just to hear how that grew and built and became what it is today is incredible. And I just wanted to touch on this, on the point, and perhaps we can get Dr. Samim's background here. You know, we're speaking about what it was like in Afghanistan and for your sister, and if you could go into what is it like in Afghanistan, what was it like, and if you can provide some of that perspective, that would be great.
Thank you so much, first of all, for this beautiful opportunity to be with all of you. And thank you for all the great words, Jacques, Louis, and this has been an amazing and humbling experience for me to have known you, your family members, and you're basically God sent to me in a very difficult time. So I would like to just give you a little bit of background on where I am from. So a lot of you just heard the name Afghanistan, but I just wanted to share this, just pictures, no words, and talk through that for a little bit. So if you see, this is the map of Afghanistan. It's a beautiful country, beautiful culture. that we don't see very much of it right now through the media that we watch and listen to. Once it was a beautiful country and multicultural, multi-religious. We had beautiful Jewish community among the biggest community of Afghans once, and it is located in South Asia, Central Asia, and as you see, we have some neighbors: Pakistan, China, former Soviet Union states, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, and to the west, Iran. So a beautiful country, multi-climate, hospitality and friendship has been always a big part of Afghan culture, but since the invasion of the country by the Soviet Union and late 70s. So the face of the country was changed by this long, vicious conflict. And in 2002, after the first regime of the Taliban was collapsed by our NATO allies, it was, you know, a fresh time for the Afghans, a fresh breath for the Afghans, for the allies to come and remove the Taliban from power, and then work with Afghans and work for democracy and for different universal human values. So as Canadians, we and Western allies, we had military and civic presence for almost 2 decades. We lost 157 precious Canadian lives during that conflict, and during our efforts to bring democracy and freedom to the Afghan people. And all of it suddenly disappeared last year in the month of August, when that country was left alone in the hand of this monster regime. This is a picture of the Taliban sitting at the desk of former President Ashraf Ghani, the first day that they took the country and the darkness came back to the country. So I remember days during the previous regime of the Taliban. These were the situation of our women. So they were beaten up on the street. Men, women were tortured, beaten. There was no vision for the future. And I knew, and as an individual, I worked very, very hard to explain to the world when there was an opportunity that this regime should not come back to the power. But they came to power. They came to power. And then this was the picture from the day that they came to power. So Afghans who worked with military forces and with all other allies, you know, and they were running away from the country because of that regime coming to power. So, and people were running away from the country because they were in danger. So I was in Ottawa and I had a disabled sister that you see here, Shahnaz Samim, stranded in Afghanistan. And I was desperate and looking for ways to get her out of Afghanistan, because she was the only one after the passing of my mom and dad that she left there, and she was clearly in danger because of my activities when I was in Afghanistan. So I had no way to bring her, but you know, this miracle happened, and these amazing godsends were sent to me. So Dan Demers, a former friend of mine, one of the Canadians that I had met for many years ago, so called me and said, "What's going on?" And I told him my situation, and then he said, "Let me do something." And then it was an afternoon and around 5, 6 o'clock. So Retik came to rescue. And then immediately he connected to Jacques Shore, who are like my brothers right now, and they started to help me. They talk to me, they understand my situation, they try to understand my situation, and they try to help me. So, and then we managed to get my sister out of Afghanistan, but along with that, so over 800 people in those 2 flights that we fundraised through these amazing people. And then we continued with this effort. And I love the word Abraham, because it's an intersection between my faith, I'm a Muslim, and the Jewish faith and other Abrahami religions. So we came together to rescue Afghans, and so we went through a lot. And these people on the screen, they instilled real humanity in me. They taught me that the work of God. They taught me what humanity is, regardless of what denomination we belong to. They became like my brothers, and they rescued my family and my Afghan countrymen and women that they were in grave danger. We managed to bring some of them to Canada, and some of them to different countries. And then there were some other heroes like Bram, like Brandon, Susie Shore, all of them my Jewish brothers and sisters. You know, they helped in different ways. They went above and beyond, not just them, but their families as well. They went through so much difficulties, so much hard work, and I wouldn't be able to bring my sister here, my family here, and we wouldn't be able to bring all those precious Afghan lives that they were endangered without the help of these people. So this will never be forgotten until I am put in my grave. And we have had days that we cried together, and they provided the shoulder that I could keep my head and cry and rely on them. And no one else helped us. No government helped us. This was, just angels of God that they came and helped us, and I'm so thankful for this friendship, for this brotherhood. And this still continues. Day and night, we connect with each other. We try to find ways to save lives. This gives a meaning to me, and I want to share this meaning with all of you. So for me, there is no line to separate people. There's people from a different religion came to rescue somebody from a different religion. So many people look just superficially on some of the conflicts that's going on in the world. But this is an example of humanity. This is an example of, human work. This is an example of God work, and I'm so thankful for this. And I will be forever to these people. And there are just a number of them. There are so many others that I could not their pictures here. But honestly, Jacques, Louis, Bram, I love you like my brothers, like my family. Thank you for everything that you have done and your families. I would be grateful forever. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Farouq, for really sharing that story and sharing with us that special bond that exists between you. And it's something so special, and what that can do to create change, and thank you for providing that background as well, and provide really that context of what it was like to get to Canada. And so I guess I'm directing this a little bit more to Dr. Samim, but then also to Bram. What was it like for the Afghan community in Canada, and when the community came to Canada, the Afghan community came to Canada, how was that like, and what does that look like?
Bram, you want to go ahead?
I think Farouq, why don't you go first, and then you talk about the generalities, and I'll get into some of the specifics. Go ahead.
Well, after all those difficult days and nights that our brothers went through, and we managed to bring families here, not just my family, but a number of Afghan diplomats in danger. We brought them here. Bringing people to Canada is very challenging, you know, in this kind of circumstances, but helping them in their integration is another huge work, you know, that if you're just alone, you're not able to do that. So there were a number of people that they immediately got involved, you know, of course, Jacques Shore, Lewis, and continued their work on both fronts, continuing to help evacuate more Afghans, but also contributing to integrating those that they arrived into the society. And then we came across some amazing people like Bregman, Susie Shore, Brandon, my dear brother, who is not on this call today, and Dan Demers. So they all went above and beyond. So they fundraised. Without the support from the government, they managed to do enough fundraising to put people in the hotel, provide the best accommodation for them, and then, you know, up to now, you know, none of them have stopped. You know, it is amazing to hear from them every once in a while. The last message that I got, and it's all giving. No, nothing. They're not asking for anything. They're just giving. They're just supporting. You know, the last message from Bram was, you know, Farouq, here's the link. Send it to your family members and other fellow Afghans. That I'm really worried that they will be cold in the winter. There are free winter jackets for them. Here is the list of apartment buildings that you can get them, you know, discounted rents, you know. Here is the way that, you know, you can send, you know, children to school. Here is a bike. Here is a bag of food. Here are gift cards, you know, all giving, you know. So far, we have been able to bring like over 50 people for sure to the city of Ottawa, and it wouldn't be possible without these amazing people on the call today. So I'll stop here.
All right. Well, firstly, I'll just quickly throw in how I got first involved. Was you know, I think they started this in the mid-August 2021. Rosh Hashanah 2021, so that was September 7th. Basically, a few weeks later, Lewis came up to me in Shoal and said he's having some troubles with this project. And I said, well, so I happen to have been involved in another refugee project. So I said, well, I have a friend that we can talk to. Maybe they can help. And then that night of Rosh Hashanah, Lewis and I and my friend from the Shapiro Foundation named Larry Tobin got on a call. And we ended up getting Yotam in from Israel Aid, it's a great NGO based in Israel. And then basically, I mean, for myself, I haven't stopped since then. And that was so September 7th, 2021. And it's been, and I basically officially got involved, and I said that I'd help with the fundraising, you know, that I'd be honored to help with the fundraising. It ended up evolving into many, many things. But one of the areas that I took responsibility for was settling them here. So the first group that came was about 36 people. And the biggest issue that probably we had was that usually if you do a private sponsorship, where you're paying for everything and taking full responsibility, but you're only doing it for one family. Or you might be involved in bringing over 10 families, which is what we did, 10 different family units, but then they're government-assisted refugees and they're getting supports from the government. In our case, we didn't have that yet. We eventually got them government-assisted. We eventually got them support from the government, but when they first came, we had full responsibility. So it was a very, very busy time that took place over basically from last December to last February, March when they came. I worked with the Catholic Center for Immigration and also with Jewish Family Services. Andrea Gardner is here on the call, and she's been a tremendous partner, so thank you. And basically, working with these two organizations, we try to maximize as many services as we could from them. But then it was even, how do we fly them over? Because we were not getting flights paid for by the government of Canada. So I ended up connecting with an organization called Miles for Migrants, which is based in the US, where they get people to donate miles, airplane miles and stuff like that, air miles, and they use them to fly refugees in, I guess, situations like ours. So I was able to apply to them and work that all out. We ended up working with Jesuit Refugee Services of Montreal, who have the license to work with them in Canada. So basically, the Catholic Centre for Immigration, along with the Jewish Family Services of Ottawa, with Jesuit Refugee Services, we're working together to get out Muslims from Afghanistan. So it was really a beautiful team effort. And on the settlement side, it was very, very hectic because we needed to find volunteers. Think about every single thing that you need to do when you're coming to a new country. All these Afghans came over with one suitcase each. Can we imagine packing our whole lives in one suitcase? So coming here, we had to figure out where they could stay, where they had to quarantine. We had to figure out their food. The closest we could get them on flights was actually to Montreal. So we had to order buses to pick them up in Montreal. Then eventually Farouq went with his family members in vans and they would go pick them up. And then, even just the small things when they got here, all their electronic devices, we needed to get them adapters and converters and things you don't think about. Somebody caught an infection and we had to go see doctors. Donna Shore, who's on the call, was helpful with a couple of those cases. And then eventually, once they're out of the hotel, we had to get them apartments, and vacancy in Ottawa at that time was basically close to zero. So they basically had no budget really. So very luckily, I have to thank Dan Greenberg from Accora Village and Mike McGann from CLB, who both were very generous in giving discounted rates on apartments. But, there was just like every little detail had to be worked out. And it was, and then over time, it was more. We took them to an Ottawa Senators game once they settled here after a month or two to show them what Canadian culture is all about. We got them bikes in the summertime. We got them winter coats a few months ago, just every need of theirs. So it was a lot of work, but I have to admit it was very rewarding. The first night they came, Lewis happened to be away at the bus, but Farouq, Jacques, and I met them at 3 a.m. Okay, we had to wait from them 3 a.m. when they arrived. And I can tell you when they got here, and the three of us were there thinking of Lewis, and just warmly welcoming them and seeing them. It was just an incredible experience.
Amazing.
Well said, Bram. That was great.
I was just going to say it really, it takes a village, and to see all these real true interfaith dialogue and mission together to do this. And it's just really inspiring to hear about. So thank you. And I know the work is ongoing. So you say, you had to do this, but you still have to do that, and so it's just, it's this huge, big effort that it's amazing. So we have some questions that I'm going to get to a little bit later that ask about how people can help. So we'll get to that in a little bit, but I wanted to close out with a question, just in terms of the Jewish component, and I know that this is in particular to Jacques and just that background, that Jewish history and the Jewish background that Jacques has, and how that affected how you, I guess, see your role or just your glasses in viewing everything.
Thank you, Amanda. And you would understand this very well. I'm a child of Holocaust survivors, so the fact that I'm actually here, able to speak with you today, and Amanda is here, is simply because of righteous Gentiles that saved my mother. And so, thinking about the Holocaust and what would have been if we would have had people saving others, what would have been if the St. Louis wouldn't have had the difficulties that it had. To me, this was the St. Louis, so much of this. And when I speak to the media occasionally, because what I also want to say is there's certain things we cannot talk about at all today, simply because we are in the midst of very sensitive discussions and negotiations and things that are going on. But it really is where I speak to that, and I speak to the issue of, do we want to have a prime minister 30 years from now having to apologize for Canada not acting and doing what it should be doing today? So, of course, tikkun olam, preparing the world. That's very, very much the motivation, but it's something that is basically infused. It's natural, and I think that in the context of that, if government is not doing what they're doing, then of course we have to engage. There is that moral imperative. There is in our faith and need. but there's something very universal. And those of you who know me, I do have to take a quote from one of my mother's books. My mother had written extensively. She was a poet. She was a philosopher. She was a writer. She wrote a lot also regarding the Holocaust, and her legacy continues on. But there's something that I think is very universal, which I'm going to read for a moment. And she says in her book, Building Bridges, I know that faith is not part of the lives of all people. Maybe that is why I search the common thread in all religions of the world. For me, the world is small. People all over the world are the same. It does not matter if they are black, white, yellow, or mixed color. They are short or tall. I think about the mother in the Sahara. I see in her mother who wants exactly what I want. She wants her children to live in a free, just, and honest world. And she wants her children not to live in fear. Well, isn't that what we all want? And that's our thread.
Thank you, Jacques.
Yeah, I'll just quickly add on to that I think, it's very much a Jewish value to help. We talked about this at the we say the haftam et hager. And the ger is translated as a stranger, but it's not the correct translation. The correct translation would be a newcomer. And it's Rabbi Sachs actually talked about how, he used to think that the toughest mitzvah commandment in the Torah was v'ahavta l're'echa kamocha, love your neighbor like yourself. But your neighbor is usually like yourself. So that's an easy one to do. But when you have to love the newcomer, somebody who's different than you, that's the toughest one out there. And that's one of the tougher mitzvahs to commandments to fulfill. And that's what makes this particularly special. And that's who we are as Jews. And then as Jacques said, it's very much our experience as refugees, as Jews. When I saw one of the kids that came over was 3 years old. And when he was here, I remember my grandfather was 3 when he came to Canada. And I was thinking about like how hard that must have been. And that I'm sure that there were strangers that helped them as well.
Just wanted to add something here. By the way, sometimes I joke with all my friends, and it comes from heart. I say I'm half Jewish now, half, because of these values, these Jewish values that were brought to my life, and this is amazing. This is not the first time I have worked with my Jewish brothers and sisters as a former journalist and fixer in Afghanistan. I have worked with a number of Jewish colleagues, and the experience has always been amazing, and there has always been a common ground between us. But let me tell you about these efforts. Every one of my brothers here have like very critical role. Without Jacques Shore, I can't call him, just only Jacques. I call him always from heart, dear Jacques. In message and phone, same thing for Louis, Bram, all of them. So without his precision, without his established, strong connection within the system that we have here in Canada, a lot of things wouldn't have been possible. During this evacuation process, we had loss of lives. My nephew lost his life in that terrorist attack on the 26th of August in Kabul while supporting the extraction and evacuation of families. He left behind a young widow and 5 orphans that Jacques and Louis and all of Operation Abraham is trying to bring to Canada. We lost a young soul, Yaman Assimi. The only sin for him was to be the brother of a female judge in Afghanistan. He was pulled out of his house by the monster regime of the Taliban and shot and killed a block away from his house. And if these brothers like Louis, Jacques, Bram, and all of the Operation Abraham, some of them, everyone has played part. I see Andrea there, Andrea Gardner from Jewish Family Services. I see wonderful Dr. Donna there. So and so all of them, either they were involved or behind the scene, they played an important role to keep us strong, to save these lives, and it's not something simple. evacuating people from a grave danger zone like Afghanistan, 1,500 people. This is the work of God. This is the work of real human beings. And these are role models for us and for the world. And I'm not saying that because they're here, they have instilled those values in me. And then I will continue with this. I'll spread these values with those that I would help in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. It's so important and heartfelt, and it really goes to show everyone can have a role to play, you know, and everyone can contribute in their own way and add to this and create this better world and these connections and understand that we're more alike than we are not. And so what an important
I do want to add,
example.
I mean, I have to add, because Farouq is a star. Farouq is an inspiration. Farouq is a rock in terms of the strength. Farouq and I have our conversations 11:30 at night, 7 in the morning. Farouq is up half the night completing the ridiculous forms that have to go into the Immigration Canada portal. He does the translations. He puts the things together. He is, you know, he is the fixer. There's a reason why Kim Barker, when she was with the Chicago Tribune, wrote a book that basically covered what it was that Farouq did, because he is a fixer. He continues to be a fixer with a golden heart. And so it is, and I say it is a privilege and a blessing to be able to work alongside Farouq and to see what he does and the good that he does today, what he does for so many of the newcomers that come to Ottawa. He has a huge responsibility as a doctor in that clinic to take care of them. And they have many problems, so many. They're not just health issues. They could be emotional, they could be physical or otherwise, but he is there, and I don't know when he sleeps. So he gives us the strength to do that every day.
You know, Jacques said this, and I remember, I'll never forget, in the early days when we had when we had the planes to get from, like Jacques said, you know, a very small slice of how it all unraveled. I mean, we had Farouq's family and others in Kabul, and we learned about other organizations that were thinking maybe, you know, there's a route to get planes in Mazar-i-Sharif in the north. And so, and this is no joke, and this part I could say because it's not putting anyone at risk, but Farouq and Jacques, I don't even know if you remember this, but we were actually connecting with an undercover CIA agent in Afghanistan, still on the ground, notwithstanding the already withdrawal by the US forces.
Of course.
And they were helping us manage this loosely coordinated ferry of individuals in you know, a van of 3 people, of 6 people, because we didn't want to tip off the Taliban because they had checkpoints. You know, and this is Afghanistan. It's not like we could fly in or send a police force, or, you know, there was no going in and out. And ultimately, we, together with these various organizations, got almost 800 people, of which over 40 were under the age of 2, into Mazar-i-Sharif in the north. And I don't know if anyone remembers back in the days, but there was talk about 6 airplanes in Mazar-i-Sharif on CNN and all the various news agencies. Biden was telling the Taliban they should let those planes go. 2 of those 6 planes were actually our planes that we've been talking about. And we had almost 800 people in wedding halls in Mazar-i-Sharif, because where are you going to put almost 800 people? And Farouq, throughout all of this, had his own family in there. And of course, his concern for his family was immense. And all he wanted to do was rescue his family. By day, Farouq was doing his day job. And by night, remember, Farouq was a doctor as well, he was fielding calls, not to his family members, but to people he didn't know, complete strangers, providing emotional support from Canada to help them know that we're working on these planes, that we're doing everything that we can to be safe. And just so you understand the safety concerns at the time, is when we finally were ferrying the passengers on the first airplane to the airport in the hopes that we could get the plane off the ground, because we didn't know we could. Farouq's own sister was arrested by the Taliban, and it took a nephew to help negotiate with the Taliban to try and release his sister. I mean, this is the environment we're talking. We're not talking, this wasn't Pearson Airport, right? And throughout all of this, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, Farouq, you cried and lost it and yelled and screamed and swore and cussed and everything. But when he was speaking to these people, he was calm, cool, and collected, Farouq. And all he had in his mind with all of this going on is, how am I gonna help all these other people, strangers to Farouq, right? And these are true strangers. These are members of minority groups that Farouq is not part of. These are other faiths and religions within the Afghanistan fabric. And so Farouq talks about Jacques and Bram and I about reaching out to strangers, but Farouq is no different, right? He was doing it in his way, in his situation, but I don't know when he slept. All night, Farouq would be working in the daytime, then from 4 o'clock to 10 or 11 or midnight, working on our families. And then from midnight to I could call him 24/7 and he was doing something.
And I'm going to mention something here, and Louis is very humble and he didn't mention it. So when my sister was arrested at the airport, stopped from getting into the flight, and she didn't have anything but a print photocopy of the front page of her passport. So, and then she was talking to me after she was allowed to the plane, and I told her, don't worry, my sister. The Taliban have guns, but I have some brothers that they don't have guns, but they have a lot of power. We will get you out. And these
we did.
Friends.
And we prayed. We all prayed.
All of you, so you have, with your humanity, you have been the strongest. You don't have to have weapon. You don't have to have technology to help. You just need to believe in human values, and they have done it. All of them, Bram, Louis, Jacques, your families, everyone. So you have done so much, and that's what I told my sister. Don't worry, we don't have weapons, but I have friends that they have humanity which is stronger than the guns that the Taliban have. We will get you to Canada. And we got her to Canada. And you saw the smile on the picture that I showed you. Shahnaz is living with me right now. I have my full productivity at work and what I am doing. It's just an example. It may look selfish, we have rescued a lot of people. But when my sister was stranded, a disabled sister in Afghanistan in grave danger, I could not think well, I could not work well, I could not contribute to my daily work. Now I can because of these amazing people.
Thank you so much. Really.
I'm just going to quickly say that Farouq is what we would call a mensch.
100%.
Definitely. And I really appreciate you sharing your story, and it's personal, and it really hits home, and I think it hits home to everyone. And sort of on that note, we have a couple minutes, and I'm just going to scan some of the questions here. I think you guys covered quite a bit of it, and some things I think you probably cannot answer, but I'll just read out what I can, and then perhaps we can do a couple quick questions. So we have a question from Phil here that says, how is Operation Abraham currently ongoing? How are folks now being brought out of Afghanistan? Are there things that we can do to help / contribute? So perhaps you can speak to the second part of that question.
I'm going to say very quickly that, it was very, very clear to all of us that we just can't do this alone. And we know that there's a cycle where this is going to just have to keep on going for a while. I'm very grateful that we actually have engaged in a special relationship with the Raoul Wallenberg Centre for Human Rights. Erwin Kotler is known to all of us. Erwin is a great friend. Erwin watched this from the early days as well. We sought, his advice occasionally as well, and it was obvious to all of us that this needed to be part of it. So anyone who wants to participate in Operation Abraham in a meaningful way would really be doing it through our efforts now with the Raoul Wallenberg Centre, where as we are getting more names, I'm actually passing those names on. And in fact, Operation Abraham was funded to a great extent through Gallon WLG. Lewis and I cannot thank our partners enough for the way in which they so fully engage. There's a story we can't share yet, but how amazing our firm has backed us up from day one and continues to do that. The time, the effort, the people that have been engaged in this, the money we have raised. But if you go on the Raoul Wallenberg site, you'll see actually the Operation Abraham component. And I think people like Brandon Silver, people like Gila Kotler, they're engaged in this effort.
And I would add, first of all, I just want to make sure so that's not overlooked that in addition to our firm, you know, Bram's fundraising skills.
Absolutely. Amazing.
To none.
Yeah.
You know, one thing that brings me joy when I come to work is one of the people on the first airplane works at our firm, not just because he came on an Operation Abraham plane, but because of his own skills and intelligence and abilities. And actually just the other day, he got a promotion here and we're very proud of him. That brings me joy. And so, you know, we do have a couple of hundred more people that we're hoping to welcome into our community. I'd love to tell you tomorrow or next week. But you know, dealing with government every week is next week until they're here. But we'll have others come, and you'll have opportunities to donate bikes and coats and things, because they're going to come with help from the government, hopefully, but with nothing on their back. And the other piece in there is, you know, I'm just going to put it out there. If you think of job opportunities, like we have people with education who could speak English, you know, bring that forward. You never know whether a match could be made. That's, you know, that could also be invaluable.
So I'll just share quickly that of the Afghans that are here already, the number one need is jobs of the ones that are here. Most of them still are, you know, do not have jobs. And it's most people, my experience is a lot of people say that they're open to helping refugees, but when push comes to shove, they're not. So if someone does have some opportunities there, then to please reach out to us. You can reach out to us through Anne or through Amanda. And then the second thing is, as they said, is, you know, there's hopefully, you know, upwards of 130 people coming to Ottawa. They will come as government assisted refugees. So their basic needs will be covered, but there's going to be things like furnishing their apartments. It's going to be finding them apartments. It's going to be, you know, getting them even just, you know, something to welcome them to Canada. You know, we gave, when all of our friends came, we gave them all Canada hats, you know, just something small and token. But there will be a lot to do, not as much as the last group, but we will need help collecting items and furnishing apartments for sure.
So I think on that, oh, go on.
And if they, like all the other times, we couldn't land them in Ottawa, but this time I think we're going to be able to land them in Ottawa. And with the COVID barriers gone, it would be the first time that we could have a welcoming committee at the Ottawa airport, and that would be the most wonderful thing to do if we could pull that off. Good from the Jewish community.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, I think that's a great idea. And I know Anne plugged in her email address into the chat, and there's various ways that you can get involved. If you have questions, then please send them our way, and we can help direct you, because this is an ongoing effort. And as you now know, it takes a village. And so, but I know I want to respect everyone's time. So I really, you know, I'm sorry we can't get to the questions, but hopefully, you know, we will have more such discussions, and maybe you know, this can happen again in a year or two, and how many more people will already be here. So I just wanted to thank each and every one of you for taking the time to speak about it, and to really bring us in on this very extraordinary,
Amanda, I'm going to interrupt, because I said, if there's anything else I would suggest you do, write to your MPs, write to the ministers, recognize that we have a responsibility to these people that were there to help us, to save us, to work with us. We need to motivate our political leadership to appreciate the importance of this. We're in touch with them every day, but how much it helps by you actually demonstrating your wish to help these people as well.
Perfect. Great. Well, thank you everyone for coming. And I really appreciate everyone being here. I hope everyone has a great night. And thank you to our guests.
Thank you very
Anne.
much.
Thank you, Anne. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you
Thank you
so
all.
much to everyone. Thank you. Just before you go, I just want to say, tonight we've really had the opportunity to hear such incredible stories that speak to the power of human kindness and what's really possible when we take action and to ensure that the care and well-being of the oppressed, and to love the stranger. And as Bram has quickly reminded us, that the stranger can actually is our neighbor. And so what we've learned here tonight, I just also want to give a major shout out to Amanda Shore, our chair of J Fellows, who, like the people on the call, has had the courage to stand up and really exemplifies what it means to say, Hineni, here I am. I may not know what is needed, but I'm ready to stand up and take action and take leadership. Amanda, this is our last session of J Fellows 2022. It has been such a privilege working with you this past year. And to everyone on the call, thank you so much for coming. To Louis, Retik, Jacques Shore, Dr. Samim, Bram, Bregman, you're an inspiration. We really appreciate your time and sharing your story here tonight. As we go
Thank you
in,
so much.
yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thanks a lot, everyone.
God bless. God bless.
Good
Be
night.
well. God bless. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.